President Trump has issued a warning to Iran's government. Any bloody crackdown on protesters will invite U.S. intervention. Trump says that U.S. is ready to help the protesters, but what are his options and limits for an intervention in Iran? Well, in the latest social media post, Trump said that Iran is looking at freedom, adding that USA stands ready to help. This comes after he had warned Iranian against the violent crackdown.
Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over certain cities that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. We're watching the situation very carefully. I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts. And that doesn't mean boots on the ground, but it means hitting them very, very hard where it hurts.
Multiple U.S. media report claim that Trump administration officials have already discussed the possible options. According to reports, one option being discussed is a large-scale aerial attack on multiple Iranian military targets. These could target IRGC or law enforcement forces that are being used to put down the growing protests. Another option includes strikes on non-military sites, and reports citing officials said that there isn't a consensus on what course of action to take. But there is a fear that a U.S. military intervention may backfire. Strikes could also deter some of the protesters from taking to the streets. A direct American intervention may be rejected by parts of Iranian public. It could galvanize people to support the government. Well, the New York Times report citing a senior U.S. military official said that commanders in the region would want more time to prepare for any possible retaliation by Iran. The reports also claim that no military equipment or personnel had been moved in preparation for a strike. However, the U.S. has a considerable presence in the region. U.S. Central Command has been conducting strikes against Islamic State targets in Syria. Now, back in June, American B-2 bombers had directly flown from the U.S. to hit nuclear facilities in Iran. Iran has warned that any U.S. attack would lead to retaliation. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has assured Iranians that help is on the way. Graham told Iranians that their long nightmare is soon coming to an end. Graham added, "Who are sacrificing in Iran, God bless, help is on the way." Earlier, Trump had shared a tweet from Graham calling to make Iran great again. Now, U.S. already has a willing ally in the region in Israel. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke by phone on Saturday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Reports said that the two leaders discussed the protests in Iran, along with the situation in Syria and Gaza. Israel is on high alert for the possibility of any U.S. intervention in Iran. And to discuss this in greater detail, we're being joined live by James J. Marlowe. He's a West Asia analyst. Thank you so much, James, for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
Now, 2 weeks of protests have posed one of the biggest challenges to Iran's leadership since 1979. And despite internet shutdowns, videos likely sent by Starlink are emerging from Tehran and other cities, which are suggesting that the unrest is widespread. And in the latest, according to the right groups, they say that 192 people have been killed and around 2,600 have been detained. Now, James, do you think that these figures risk being conservative? And does this also raise questions about possible human rights violations during the crackdown in Iran?
What I'm hearing from dissident organizations is that the figure is in its thousands. Thousands have been shot there. These, of course, are unconfirmed reports. But I would imagine because you have the internet blackout, because you have the electricity blackout, only a few pictures, videos are getting through Elon Musk's other organization, Starlight. But thousands are being reported at this point. It's really difficult. If I can pick up on your first point, it's actually it's unprecedented for 47 years. Since the Iranian Revolution came to power in 1979, 47 years it's almost, there has never been anything like this before. The amount of people that have come out onto the streets, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and they're not just coming out because they oppose the Ayatollah Khomeini and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and the Secret Service and the army, etc. They're coming out because they're losing money, they're losing their businesses. The entire currency has fallen through the roof. And they're scared. They're scared that they will have absolutely nothing. And the Iranian people are generally very hardworking, really nice people. It's not that the West has any problem with the Iranian people. Israel doesn't have any problem with the Iranian people. It's just the actual regime, which is only supported by about 20% of the actual entire country. And that's what's very interesting right now, because a few weeks ago, the Shah of Iran, who of course fell in 1979, the son is still very, very prominent. He lives in America right now. His support wasn't that great, but actually in the last 2 weeks, you've seen his support rise up phenomenally because of what's taking place on the streets of Iran. And yet the people are still coming out, from what I understand, despite the fact that Iranian Revolutionary Guards and the Secret Service are shooting them down.
Absolutely, and it's as interesting as it is precarious. But Iran's Iran's parliamentary speaker has warned that U.S. military and commercial bases could be targeted if Washington intervenes. And it also said that Iran would act on perceived threats to avoid miscalculation. Now, how should we read this? Is Iran perhaps hinting at preemptive strikes here?
Well, firstly, Prime Minister Netanyahu from Israel has spoken to Marco Rubio several times. You mentioned the conversation yesterday, but several times. And the Israelis and the Americans have looked very, very carefully into specific targets over several weeks. And the reason for that is because Netanyahu is pushing President Trump to hit back at Iran anyway, before you've seen what we've seen in the last week or so on the Iranian streets. And that is simply because the Iranians, who were hit really hard last time by the Israeli strikes, I mean, within hours, the entire Iranian defense system was taken out. The Israelis got control of the skies, and then they started hitting many of the military bases and also nuclear bases as well. And the Americans then, if you remember, came in and finished off the job as such. But since that time, the Iranians have been building up their factory of international ballistic missiles. And Israel says these are aimed at us and we have to go in and take them out again. The Americans, of course, is someone who wants, President Trump is somebody who said many times he wants peace. But sometimes in order to get peace, the only way to do that is sometimes to launch a strike. And they've been doing that several times, of course, in Syria against ISIS positions, and they're ready to move against Iran. Now, what you said in the intro is actually very interesting, because you've got a lot of people still on the streets of Iran right now, but yet at the same time, the strikes are coming down in military bases and IRGC bases as well, and also some perhaps the parliament, which might be possibly a target. We don't know at this point. Then, of course, the people may just scatter, and you won't have the amount of revolutionary, if you like, these amount of demonstrators on the streets. But that could be a good thing, because the demonstrators could actually be saying, you know what, hit them as hard as you can. They will be concerned about the strikes coming down. We can then get out onto the streets. But then where do they go from there? They're not armed. They don't have tanks. They don't have weaponry, unless you've got actually army people now moving over to the side of the people. Then, of course, the Iranians can still crush them on the ground, which is what they seem to be doing right now. So these American and possibly Israeli strikes will only take out more military bases, but the regime will still stay in power. So it's really difficult to foresee what is likely to take place over the coming days and weeks. But it's down to Iran. Iran will make that decision.
We hear you, James. Now, the definition of peace and also the process to achieve it has become widely debatable in the last decade. Now, as you mentioned, Reza Pahlavi, now he has urged Iranians to keep protesting, claiming that the demonstrations have weakened the state's ability to respond. Now, how do you read his statement, and what does it signal about what may come next for Iran?
And I can also add to that as well, because I just heard a few minutes ago the Prime Minister Netanyahu was speaking at his weekly cabinet meeting, and he said that if this regime falls, then Israel and Iran will become partners in economics, partners in sharing intelligence. I mean, the Iranian people are struggling right now with electricity cutouts. Their electricity grid is really bad. They're struggling with food and medicine. They're struggling with water. Israel has said for many, many months, if there was a deal between Israel and Iran, We are experts, meaning Israel is experts in the desalination of water. We can send a lot of water to you. So that's why more Iranians are actually looking past this regime and thinking, you know what, perhaps it wasn't so bad before 1979 when Israel's best friend in the entire region was, believe it or not, Iran. And all that has simply changed right now.
Absolutely. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops from here. But for now, thank you so much, James, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you.